I think with that, we'll move on to the formal meeting for Westmill Solar AGM. Just checking the time, so that's good. So handing over to myself for this, which feels slightly weird. Welcome to everybody again. And I'd like to declare the Westmill Solar 2022 Annual General Meeting open. I believe we've got a quorum of 12 members. It looks like we've got well over that. So thank you again all for joining us. We have, I think, all of the Westmill Solar Board online, who you may be able to see. And also Joe Michaels, who is standing for election as a director this time at this meeting. I think there's another slide on protocol. Is that right, Sam? Which we've gone through. Just to highlight a couple of points, as we did last year, I'm anticipating that the motions will be proposed by myself, but we'd like members to second a motion. And if you could do that by using the raise hand function in Zoom, that would be great. We also have the usual polling function. There are two things I would say on this. One is that many of you attending have already voted in advance, so please can I ask you not to vote twice. And also, obviously, voting at this point is only available to solar members. So if you are a wind member but not a solar member, you're very welcome. It's great that you can join us, but please don't vote on the actual resolutions for solar coming through. Sam, I think, have we got a mock dummy poll? So just to test,
do indeed.
That's brilliant. So we're just going to test the system. And as I said, if you have already voted in advance, please don't vote. And if you're not a Westmill Solar member, please don't vote. So this poll, it's not a formal resolution, but if we could mimic it as best as possible. Personal preferences?
Well, looks like it's all coming in quite spectacularly. So we're looking for today, just so we know, once we have collected a number of 58 people voting on the day. So once we hit that 58 number, the poll will close. We'll also give investors a sort of 5 seconds from 30. So we'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll end the poll there. So the poll is ended. I will be sharing the results with you now. So you should be able to share results so that members can also see in front of them how the vote has gone. We've also been collecting, obviously, votes ahead of the AGM, and those will be shared at the same time. So it looks as though a pretty even split, which is good to see.
And the right number of people voting, which is even better.
Indeed.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sam. The other thing I should just mention, if we have some kind of technical disaster, if you as a member drop offline, you should be able just to come straight back into the meeting. If I drop offline for any reason, then Nina Alfie has kindly agreed to cover as chair for me. And there is a resolution later on in the Solar AGM for my re-election where Nina will take over the chair anyway. Are there any questions on any of that? Sam, has anything come in through chat that we need to deal with? Or shall we move on?
No, nothing in chat. It looks like we're all good to go.
Brilliant. Okay, so turning to the formal business, the first motion is to approve the minutes of last year's AGM. These were sent out to everybody in draft ahead of the meeting. We actually had comments, I think, from 2 shareholders, but it was 2 members. But it was the same comment, where in the section on the development reserve, we had included a figure of £500,000, which was what was put into the reserve. And I think the original wording had given the impression that the 2019 bond issue had cost that much, which wasn't the case. The bond issue was a lot cheaper than that. But the additional costs that were involved in terms of accelerated interest and otherwise in the early payment of the loan back to LPPI together with that, they came to about that total figure. So we have clarified that in the minutes, but subject to that one amendment, they are in the form that was distributed to everybody and circulated last month. So if anybody has any questions on those minutes, any other questions on those minutes, now would be the right time.
Yeah, please put anything in the chat if there is anything. Any other comments? Raised hands that appears to have gone down, so I will take that as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I guess no further comments.
No further comments. Okay, so Sam, if we can put that to a vote.
Well, sorry, can we first have a motion? A second.
A motion. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's absolutely. Thank you. So I will propose that the draft minutes of the 2021 AGM, as amended, as we've just said, be approved. Could we have a seconder of somebody raising their hand function?
David Uren, thank you very much. First one.
Thank you, David.
Excellent. I will then launch the poll. Oh, hold on, there's something. Okay, we'll come back to that at another point. I will launch the poll for motion 1 now. So that should be in front of you. And so, yes, as Tom said, please only vote if you haven't done so already ahead of the AGM. So we'll give it a little bit of Tom, just as in the meantime, there is a question just posed by Kevin, who was one. It's just out of interest, how much did the bond offer cost?
I think we had allowed £50,000 for it, and it came in slightly under that in the end, partly because, no, actually that was the bond issue cost. The legal costs were related to the LPPI prepayment. So I think it was under 50,000 in the end.
I think that's correct as well, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. We've only received 19 votes on that, but I will share the results with you. And you'll see that a large portion of 16 for yes, 0 no, and 3 abstentions. I'll stop sharing that with you now, and we'll bring on to the votes collected ahead of the AGM, which were, again, all 229 for, 1 against, 39 abstentions, and 110 requests for their vote to be chaired by the proxy, which case I think we can count that motion as passed.
Thank you, Sam. I declare that resolution passed. So moving on now, I'll hand over to Martin Allman, who can update on the performance of the solar park last year, and probably most interestingly for you joining us today, an update on the transformer issue. So Martin, over to you.
Great, thanks, Tom. So many of you will know Martin Allman. I've been on the board since June 2015, and I've taken a lead on the technical issues relating to the operations and maintenance of the site since then. Working with British Solar Renewables, our O&M provider, and the asset manager, RENA. And probably for the last 6 years, this has probably been one of the easiest jobs at the AGM, because it feels like year after year, we're just reporting good news about performance of the solar park and how we continue to generate record amounts of electricity over the course of each year. This year, I also have the opportunity to talk about some of the challenges that we've been addressing to keep the site performing well. Sam, next slide, unless I've got control. Oh, there we go. So first, I wanted to talk through the month-on-month performance of the solar park, and the graph here shows the generation figures for 2021 in yellow, and in blue is the average monthly generation over the previous 8 years from 2013 to 2020. And it's fair to say that 2021 was not one of our best years. We generated 4.9 gigawatt hours of electricity, still hugely significant, but actually the second lowest annual generation in the 9 full years of the co-op running Westmill Solar. And 8 of the 12 months of 2021 were below average. You see those yellow bars falling below the blue. It's really important to say that this lower than average generation, which did sort of follow on from a record year in 2020, was the result of the weather and 12% lower irradiation than in 2020, rather than being due to any sort of any significant operational issues on the site. So I would want to assure members that month on month the site is performing well, with generally higher than the expected generation that we would look to get relative to the irradiation that's is being monitored. The next slide, please, Sam. The second slide gives a comparison of the annual generation in 2021 and that of 2020, as well as the average over the last 8 years. The 4,910 megawatt hours annual generation of 2021, which is in red, compares with that record year in yellow, where we got a fabulous 5,567 megawatt hours. And you'll remember that 2020 was the year when many of us were basking in the sunshine in our COVID bubbles of the first lockdown. 12% lower radiation, 12% lower performance in 2021 compared to 2020, and 6% lower than the average annual generation in the previous 8 years. So not a great year, but certainly not all doom and gloom. And the overriding message is that the solar park continues to perform well month on month, year on year. Next slide, please, Sam. Okay, so what does all this wonderful electricity generation mean? Well, of course, one thing that we all strive for is less carbon emissions. And aside from the financial returns, which Andy will dig into shortly, and the community benefits that we're able to offer, as Nina and Mike and Emma will talk to later, in 2021, Westmill Solar generated the equivalent consumption of 1,690 UK households, avoiding some 900 tons of CO2 emissions. Now, we know that as the site gets older, we do expect maintenance and breakdown costs to increase. And that sort of points to the transformer issue, which I'm going to come on to subsequently. But all the time, we're looking at new ways that we can be proactive in identifying performance and maintenance issues, which we can then try and address and improve. Fundamental to this is the partnership that we have with our principal operations and maintenance contractor, BSR, who really do continue to provide a great service and support. And we're also supported through the continued warranty cover and performance guarantee that we've put in place with SMA, who are the manufacturer of the 7 inverter stations on the site. And this has proved particularly valuable during this time where you see global supply chain challenges, particularly of electronic components. And what our warranty has been invaluable for is just ensuring that we get this continued availability of parts to keep the inverter stations operating well, even though they are getting older. A significant event which we fixed in 2021 was remedial action to reverse damage to more than 3,300 solar panels through potential induced degradation, or PID. This is an electrical phenomenon which degrades the power output of modules and can reduce the performance ratio of the solar farm. And this was something that we identified at the back end of 2020 with a thermographic drone survey. And then the problem was subsequently fixed last year through the installation of float controller devices on each of the inverter stations, which I'm really pleased to report has reversed the PID impact. The final point here is just about the importance of the measurement of the availability target that we track monthly and through the quarterly reports that we get from RENA. And in 2021, the solar park achieved or exceeded our 99% availability target in every month except July, October, and November. There were no significant maintenance costs during the year. The PID work was actually came out of the previous year's accounts. So all in all, a good year for Westmill Solar, even if the sun didn't quite shine as much as we would have liked. Next slide, please, Sam. So as Tom alluded to earlier, we wanted to give the opportunity to to give an update on the situation with the faulty transformer, which was initially reported in February this year, and which was subsequently taken offline and switched off, which effectively reduced the total generating capacity of the site by around 29%. So a really significant part of the solar park was disabled. Some of you will have hopefully picked up on the email correspondence that's been sent out to members that we potentially face this 6-month delay in installing a replacement transformer, and 6-month delay in getting the site back up to full capacity. And of course, it's coming at the worst time in the peak generation period over the summer months. And our calculations were pointing to potential losses in revenue of around 500,000. And due to the lead time that we're working to, which in large part is linked to this challenge of supply chain and availability of key components and raw material costs, we made this early decision to order a new transformer from GBE, Italian manufacturer, who also have presence here in the UK. And that transformer is expected to be delivered to sites and energized in September, October time. Although we are in direct contact with GBE to try and push this forward as much as possible. And at the same time, thinking about how we might incentivize that, because it's just worth us doing so. We've also been working through various avenues to find a temporary replacement transformer to cover the peak generation period over the summer months, whilst that new transformer is being manufactured. And this has really not been straightforward, in large part due to the transformers that we've got being non-standard relative to everything else that's out there. And so it's been quite a headache trying to find suitable size systems that would easily fit into the design of the solar park without causing too much disruption. And however, good news, we have confirmed just this week the hire of a suitable transformer, which is fit for purpose with some modifications. So there's some work that's being done through a UK-based specialist transformer engineering company. And we're also just working with BSR to confirm final costs and contractual details for the work. But fingers crossed, touch wood, subject to no new issues being identified, we are planning for the transformer to be operational by mid-July. I'm also pleased to report that additional testing was undertaken on the 3 remaining transformers in March. We have a planned maintenance schedule for them, and we just stepped up our testing, and no issues were identified with those systems. And going forward, we're going to continue to work with BSR and other stakeholders, just to make sure that we've got best practice on maintenance of transformers being undertaken, and also perhaps to think about what contingency plans we might look to put in place to enable quicker access to a replacement transformer should the need arise again. I'm happy to take questions, and I think there's been some questions that have come through as well. As I look at my screen.
There are. I just also highlight at this point, I have put in into the chat a update that should have been sent around to all those who registered their attendance yesterday. So that's in the chat as well, if you would like to have a read over that. I've also just in the process of uploading some FAQs that again would have been shared around with everyone yesterday. But if you didn't get a chance to see them, those are in the chats now and available for you as well. So you may find that one of your questions that you have has already been answered, and yes, you can have a look at it in there. So we have had a couple of questions, Martin. The first is from Kevin Poplar, which is, are the transformers not covered by a warranty agreement similarly to the inverters?
No. So there is actually, the transformers come with a very limited warranty of 1 year. That's a sort of industry standard. With inverters, the SMA inverters that we had a 5-year warranty as standard, and we were then able to extend that. And we've extended it twice now. I think we've still got 8 years left of an extended warranty cover that we pay for. And and that enables us to get guaranteed availability of the inverters, and effectively SMA have to pay if they don't achieve a certain performance level. It also means that they will deploy their engineers to site to keep them up and running, as well as make sure we've got components. That's not something that we had with the transformer, or indeed a service that we're able to get with the new transformer going forward. So it's just not something that's available. The other question there about, would it make sense to have one spare transformer installed on site, available on site if that one fails? This is something that we are looking at. There is a challenge in that you've got to store it, and it could degrade during that period if it could just sit there idle. But definitely it's worth thinking about what contingency measures that we can take, at the very least, to identify where perhaps units are available, and just keep those relationships going. And if something happened again, something similar, to make sure we've learned all the lessons from this episode, which could mean having a spare unit, but it could just mean being able to react even quicker, and having a database of companies that we go to trawl through to try and find a solution. There's a question about business interruption insurance. Yes, there's going to be revenue losses and additional costs from the transformer failure, but the expectation is that the large part of these should be covered by business interruption insurance. Working with other community energy projects to hold spares. The challenge here is that all sites are different, and there isn't sort of standard components, and certainly the transformers that we've got at Westmill are not, we discovered, are not standard in terms of their configuration. So it's not a sort of off-the-shelf system, so it's not so easy. About the spare transformer being available for hire to obtain income whilst not needed, possibly, but again, it goes back to where might it be a suitable solution to use. The actual transformer that we've got, it's having to be modified because it was designed for internal use, not for external use. And it's been a huge effort trying to find one that matched what we needed in the right specification. And that would be the same problem if we had a spare transformer sitting on site. Anyone looking to use it, they need to be pretty lucky if it provided that match. So that's the challenge that we're working to on that. The losses are massively more than the costs, and which is why we're looking at how we can. Insurance cover helps out on the losses, of course, but yes, if there is opportunities with any of the contractors, the manufacturers, to expedite the process of getting new systems, then we should absolutely look to incentivize that within reason, to make sure that we're fixing the problem as best we can. Lots of questions. I don't know how to take the time.
I think the next one
I can go on, but
yeah, I mean, we've got another. We're now sort of 20 minutes in. Our sort of timings are maybe if we just have a time, how much? Maybe just.
I think that's right, Marty. If you can pick one of the other one more question, and then, as I say, we will come back and try and answer these offline afterwards and circulate these questions to everybody.
So could the transformers be configured in an array in parallel with extra capacity to provide redundancy in case one fails? What we looked at on this time is to see if there was additional capacity on the other transformers on the site that we could then use to offset some of the losses that we're getting. The problem is it would require a fundamental redesign of the site, including all of the string configuration, the inverters, and it just wasn't viable. It would have had an extensive amount of work, which would have impacted the other parts of the site and would have taken considerable amount of time. So it just wasn't. It was decided fairly early on that wasn't a process that we were able to go down. And that points to Roger Thompson's question of the configuration could be modified for going into the future. It's very difficult for us to change the overall design of the park without having a sort of broader impact on inverters, which are the plant was designed with the inverters working with the transformers and everything else. The low voltage, the high voltage design was designed to work together. And to change one part of that has a knock-on effect to different parts of the site.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, I think so, in terms of just being able to make sure that we give Andy time and get the resolutions through. But thank you, and thank you for all the questions. I mean, we are very, very, very well aware that it's an issue that has caused you as well as us a lot of heartache, and hasn't made Martin's last year on the board any easier. As you'll be aware, Martin is stepping down from the board. He'd actually wanted to step down last year, and we managed to persuade him to hang on a bit, which is a decision that he is probably slightly regretting at this point. But he's been with us for 7 years. Thank you for everything you've done, not just in the last year, but also in sort of bringing us up to scratch, keeping us up to scratch in the 6 years before that. We have a Westmill print, which we can virtually is on its way to you. It's one that some of our previous directors have also had, but it's got even more value and kudos this year because Simone Darwood, who's the artist and the Westmill Wind member, has actually got another of her paintings being exhibited at the Royal Academy summer exhibition this year. So, you know, it's a stamp of approval from that, and a relatively small gesture, I have to say, but thank you, because the thanks are enormous and very, very much heartfelt. On behalf of members, if I can just say thank you, Martin, and we'll get that sorted out to delivered to you as soon as we possibly can.
That's very kind, Tom. Thank you. And it actually looks like the wind turbines are actually turning. And just to very quickly say thank you and it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you particularly to all of the board members, past and present, and a special thanks to Tom for fantastic leadership and support over the years, and to Sam and Sarah for very much keeping me on the straight and narrow right up until the AGM today. So thank you to all. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And thank you also. We did get a surprisingly and heartwarming number of responses from members when we first went out with the news, and we thought we would get, and there was obviously frustration out there. But actually what was really, really supportive was the number of offers of help, contacts and things like that from the membership. So thank you to all of you who contributed to that. Moving on, I'm conscious of time, so Andy Crawford is going to give us an overview of the 21 accounts before we move on to the various resolutions that follow on from that. So Andy, if I can hand over to you.
Thank you, Tom, and good morning, everybody. Are you going to move the slide on, Sam? Thank you very much. Okay, I'll try and rattle through given the time constraints. I should point out at the very top right-hand corner, it should say December 31st, 2021. My mistake, I think. So the income for this year is down about 7% from the previous year. That's entirely down to the issue that Martin has raised earlier on with less sunshine, basically. And obviously the 7% reduction is slightly less than the reduction in generation, and that's a function of the increased prices that we obtained. Admin expenses seem to be up. In fact, that's mostly a reflection of the fact that the year in 2020, there were some reversals of expenditure that we had reserved for that weren't actually taken, in particular legal costs relating to the bond issue that we didn't have to pay out. The members' interest, we're paying 10% this year, 10p per share. We had a number of very long discussions in board members about this. Our difficulty, I think, in deciding whether to maintain the 12p, which we'd previously paid, was really a function of the fact that we simply didn't know at the point that we had to make the decision. We didn't know the likely success of our claim against the business interruption insurance. We didn't know the time it would take to get a new transformer. We didn't know whether we could hire one in the meantime. So on a worst case basis, we were concerned, as Martin's briefly explained, that the total amount of generation lost this year and income loss could be easily £500,000. So we decided to be prudent, and also clearly being aware of what the covenants are with the LPPI loan, requiring us to keep certain cash. So we're paying 10p rather than 12p. The community fund item is simply a proportion of the members' interest. It's 1/4. So our retained profit for the year has reduced, and our cash reserves have gone up by that amount. The reduction in the loan, the loans at the very bottom, is just a reflection of the fact that the LPPI loan is paid back, capital is paid back little by little every year, and so it's gone down by about £350,000. I'm happy to take any questions. If they're high technical, I'm also happy to be available during the break if people want to ask specific questions of me that they don't think other people will be interested in. I've not seen anything come up in the chat yet, Sam. Has there been anything?
Nothing has appeared as of yet. Again, there are some of the questions in the FAQs PDF, so any financial questions you have, there will be some in there as well. I'll give people maybe a couple of minutes just to maybe type a couple of things in, but I'm not seeing anything come up. So you might have got a winning ticket there, Andy.
I seem to have got away with it compared with mine.
Yeah, as I said, there have been quite a few questions that came in before the AGM.
Yeah.
It will be in the FAQ sheet. If you did email us as well, we will be sending you a specific email so that you have that on your own records. Thank you, Sarah, just for putting in those bond costs from earlier in 2019. That's great. But it looks as though we are all okay. Actually, I'm just guessing.
That's fine.
Nothing else. Hello, Sarah. So we have got something which is regarding the trading dividend.
Yeah, I think we'll cover that one in the trading dividend if we can, Sam, and then which is it's coming up pretty soon, actually.
Your question is stored, Sarah. It will be answered.
Brilliant.
I will move on.
Thank you, Sam. So I'm going to go to the formal resolutions. I'll pick up Sarah's question on that. So resolution 2 in the agenda acknowledges the trading dividend was actually already paid out in August, September last year. It's a relatively small amount, but it's actually trading participation is a key element for most co-ops. And we're delighted that actually what we did was very much the first of its kind in the energy sector. So thanks to Co-op Energy and Octopus for helping with that. And it has piloted things like Ripple, which our members may also be aware of and members of. We've got another resolution coming up for this year's trading dividend proposals, but the intention is very much that this is something that we will expand and grow, both in the number of members who take it up and potentially the amounts involved. And what we was currently just last year showing is hundreds will grow into thousands and even tens of thousands of pounds. Sarah, your question, well, I've lost it now, so bear with me.
How is the dividend for buying Westmill electricity decided?
It was, I think we thought, and this is going on last year's prices when energy was rather cheaper than it is this year, we had tried to take an average, I think an average electricity bill for a UK home last year was about £500. We took £15 as a sort of a relatively sort of 3-4% of what would be a bill. It was a pretty rough and ready figure. Arguably, it needs to go up because bills have gone up, and it's actually, I think one of the feedback we found is £15 isn't quite tempting enough to people to go through the effort of applying for it, and actually that's then becomes self-defeating. So that is something that we're looking at and why we have provisionally allowed for a doubling, up to a doubling of that in this year's plan. Are there any questions on last year's trading dividend, though?
Nothing.
Let's take that. So if not, I propose that members acknowledge and ratify the payment of a trading dividend of £15 per eligible member as part of the trading dividend scheme, which was implemented by the directors in 2021. If I can have a seconder for that, please.
Pete Bishop. Nice and quick. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. And then if we put that out to poll.
Yeah, just give me 2 seconds. So we're looking for the training scheme implemented by directors. That's the one. So that should be launched now for members. So if you could please put your vote in as quickly as possible, that would be much appreciated. Looks like we might have some more people having joined since last, which is great. If you have already voted, then please don't vote again, just as a reminder. But we will be closing that vote in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Okay, let me just take the scores and I'll just share those for everyone. So we have 20 votes for yes, 2 votes no, and 3 abstentions in the meeting currently. I'll just stop sharing that with you now and close this, and I'll bring up the votes before the AGM, which were 240, 13 against, 16 abstentions, and 110, as I said, for proxy. So Tom, if you'd like to count that.
Thank you. I declare that resolution passed. And we'll move swiftly on to the next 2 resolutions, which deal with the allocation of our surplus for 2021. Firstly, the member share interest, and after that, community funding. As Andy's explained, there was a lot of conversation at board level as to whether we maintain the 12p or not. We felt, actually, given the uncertainties at the time, that 10p was prudent and sensible. So are there any further questions on that?
Just give us a couple of moments just to see if anyone comes in with anything. I don't think there's anything coming in. As I said, there were a couple of questions ahead of the AGM. Feel free to have a review, but hopefully it looks as though we don't have any further questions to answer.
Thank you. In which case, I propose that members acknowledge.
Oh, hold on. Oh, sorry. There was something that came in from Kevin, which is where. Let me see. Let me just bring that back up. As it seems that we are now fairly sure that losses due to the transform will be covered, could we not make the interest payment up to 12% by having an interim dividend?
We can certainly consider that. I think. I mean, although we think the losses will be less than they thought whether they were, we don't actually have any formal confirmation from the insurers that they're covering that claim. So I think we will certainly wait and see what the outcome of that is. And I know there's been something on the chat about it might impact our premiums next year as well. So we will take that into consideration and certainly see where we get to as the year progresses. We have done an interim dividend in the past, back in about 2015, 2016. So it's something that we can certainly do if we think that's appropriate. So I hope that covers that, Kevin. And if there are no more questions, I'm going to propose that members acknowledge the director's decision to pay share interest of £404,075 to members in respect of the financial year ended 31st December 2021, which represents a payment equal to 10p per share. Could I have a seconder, please?
Martin Shakespeare already in there, so
fabulous. Thank you for anticipation. Sam, do you want to hit the poll?
Yeah, absolutely. So motion 3 being launched now. So yeah, if you could please take the time to answer accordingly. Okay, let's just give that a 5.
Thank you.
And we'll end that there.
Thank you, Sam.
No worries. I'll just share the results for you now. So we have 22 in for yes, 0 no, and 2 abstentions. And I'll stop sharing that and bring up the motions votes before the AGM, which were 267 before, 0 against, and 2 abstentions. So yeah. Let's take those as accepted, then that would be.
Thank you. So I declare that resolution passed. I see there's a couple of questions on voting procedure, which we'll try and cover. It's probably too late for this year, but it's something we need to, I think, to take into account for next year for people who've sort of 2 members sitting side by side on one computer in particular. The next vote, the next resolution is on community funding. As I said earlier, I think this is something in which I think all of members should take great pride. It's grown substantially in the last few years, in no small measure due to the time and effort that Nina, Alfie and Sam in particular have put into designing the scheme and doing all the work behind the scenes. And I'd also like to thank those 4, I think, Westmill Solar members who supported the applications and who sit on the Community Grants Committee. So a shout out to Saskia Huggins, Lars Calvert, Bob Pedley and Julia Spragg. And thank you for, between you, reviewing all the applications and allocating the funding on our behalf. We're very grateful for the time. And I have to say, this is an area, and there are other similar areas where we would love to get members more involved. It's your money, our money, this is being spent, and we want to make sure it's done as effectively as we possibly can. And I know there are some concerns amongst members that somehow the community funding detracts from what we pay as member interest. That's not the case. We are a co-op, and the two complement each other. And that is the way the scheme has been designed, to make sure that the member interest and community funding payments rise and fall together. Are there any questions, particularly on the 2021 community funding allocation? However, there'll be a session, as I say, with Nina to go through that and what we're planning to do in the future in more detail. There's
one question just from John, which is, what geographical area is covered by community funding? That will be highlighted, John, in Nina's talk slightly after this. So perhaps we'll come back to that at another point. But there's a slide specifically on how far our community funding can stretch. It basically goes from regional to national to global. So we have a sort of a standard, as it were, as that.
We ripple out from local in and out. If there aren't any other questions, can I propose that members approve the allocation of £101,018 for social or charitable purposes within the community served by the Society in respect to the financial year ended 31st December 2021. Could I have a seconder, please?
Rodney Tillison, thank you very much. That's all taken.
And Sam, if you want to go through the poll.
Yep. Launching now. We'll end in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. So I'll just share those results in front of you there. So we've had 21 for, 1 against, and 2 abstentions.
Thank you.
And I'll stop sharing, and I will bring up the votes ahead, which were 232 for, 22 against, and 15 abstentions. And as I said, 110 for proxy.
Thank you. So I declare that resolution also passed. So now the next resolution is to approve the 2021 accounts as a whole. I'm assuming that questions on that will have been covered. So if anybody's got any other questions, say now. But I propose that we move on, and I propose that members receive and adopt the accounts and auditors report for the period to 31st December 2021. There's lots of hands being raised. So
well, they're all coming in. All coming in. I think Dominic Pinto, you might have been there. I'll take Dominic's there, which is great. Can I just ask that everyone lowers your hands after you've done? I can do it in the chat, but if you can do it yourself, that would mean I can see who comes in first. Thank you. But yeah, I will launch the next poll for motion 5 now, and that should be on your screen. Okay, 3 minutes. We've got about 15 minutes. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. So I'll just share those again. And so you'll see that we have 22 for, 0 against, and 2 abstentions. And we will stop sharing, and I'll bring up the votes before, which were 242 for, 0 against, 27 abstentions, and the same proxies.
Thank you. I declare that resolution also passed. The next resolution is the reappointment of auditors. As we mentioned in the accounts, and we discussed it at last year's AGM, the boards of both the solar and the wind co-ops undertook a joint tender process for the audit with a panel of directors from both boards, ultimately agreeing on the same auditor across both societies. Critchley's were previously solar's auditors, but not the wind's auditors, but they were successful in that tender and have undertaken the 2021 audit for both Westmill Solar and Westmill Wind. And both societies, although Westmill Wind will obviously have their own resolution on this, propose to reappoint Critchley's for 2022. Are there any questions on that process or the reappointment?
Again, just as a highlight, there is an FAQ in there as to why we went with Critchley's. There was, as Tom said, there's a panel. Exactly. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
So I'm very happy to share that in the chat again. If anyone doesn't want to scroll back up, just let me know. But I will launch the poll because it doesn't look like we have any other.
We haven't got a. Well, I'll need to propose the reappointment first.
Oh, we've just got a question from Sarah. Sorry, is it not good practice to change auditors sometimes?
It's certainly good practice. Well, we should not. It's good practice not to have too cozy a relationship with auditors. I think, if I can put it that way. The tender process was designed to sort of, I guess, review whether the process with Critchley was right. And if you like, the Westmill Wind board members of the panel were looking at Critchley's with fresh eyes. So that was one of the reasons why we thought it made sense to do it that way. To be fair, Critchley's have given us very good service over the last few years, and we weren't aware of any issues. But we will keep that under review. And if there's any sense that they're not appropriate, then we will look at that. There's also, since Critchley's were first appointed, Andy has taken over from Bob Pedley as finance lead. So if you like, the person on our side who's been looking at them has changed, which also gives us an opportunity. And I think the audit partner has also changed in the last couple of years. So there hasn't been complete continuity of the same people involved, which gives us also some mitigation of the risk. So I hope that answers your question on that, Sarah. Are there any other questions?
Nothing else coming in. So I will launch the poll.
So I'll.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'll propose that they be appointed as auditor first. Auditor cited until conclusion of the next AGM at a fee to be agreed by the directors. Seconder, I've seen Roger Thompson.
Yeah.
And then Sam, if you could launch the poll.
Yeah, I'll just do that now. Here we go. Launched. Okay, so we'll end that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ended poll, sharing results. So we have 19 for, 1 against, and 3 abstentions. Let's try that out, bring this down. And votes ahead of the AGM, 239 for, 3 against, 27 abstentions, and 110 proxies.
Thank you, Sam. I declare that resolution passed. The next resolution is the approval of the trading dividend for 2022. We're following good co-op practice in trying to set the parameters of this via members ahead of actually putting the scheme in place and paying it out, which obviously wasn't possible last year. And as I mentioned, we're very keen to extend the trading dividend to 2022. We will probably follow a similar process to last year's with 2 main changes. The first is that because partly energy prices have gone up, we think we should probably increase the amount involved. And that will be discussed further, but certainly for Westmill Solar, I think we're looking at £30 rather than £15. And feedback on that, as I say, I've seen from Sarah, but if other members have feedback, we will certainly take that into account. Perhaps more importantly, the dividend last year was closely linked to the community power tariff, which we're very aware, because of the turbulence in the markets, is not the most economical by any means in terms of compared to the co-op variable tariff, which is linked to the price cap. So we will probably extend the trading dividend to members who are on any co-op energy tariff, not just those who are linked to the community power tariff. But again, it's a fast-changing market, and we will take that under review. The intention is to, as I say, to try and get as many members as possible effectively buying the electricity that we generate, which is a pretty fundamental cooperative principle and something that we'd like to embed as closely as further. Does anybody have any other questions on that?
There's a couple. There's one from John Smith, which is, should we consider a percentage dividend as opposed to a flat rate?
We can, but I think if what I'm going to do, Sam, because I'm conscious of time.
Yeah. If
these questions and comments are coming in, as I say, this is not an absolutely fixed scheme. We're setting the overall parameters at the moment. So what I'd like to do is take all those comments in, and we'll feed them into as we finalise the process, if that's okay.
Yeah, understood. As I said, any questions that aren't answered here, we will be sharing answers after the AGM. So we will get back to you.
And we're also, John, I mean, we thought it was inappropriate to give people a percentage of their energy bills, because that actually encouraged people to use more energy, which was slightly counterproductive to what we're all trying to achieve, just if I could make that comment at least. There's lots of questions coming in, but I'm afraid we'll have to deal with these afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and propose that members approve a trading dividend in respect of the financial year ending 31 December 2022 of an amount no less than £15 and no more than £30 per eligible member, as determined by the directors, and in accordance with such arrangements as to eligibility and otherwise as the directors may determine. If I can have a seconder for that, please.
Mike Landy got in there. Thank you, Mike. And I will launch the poll now.
Thank you.
So we'll go 3, 2, 1. In poll. Results. So we had 17 yes, 4 against, and 3 abstentions. And in terms of votes ahead, we had 231 for, 14 against, and 24 abstentions.
Brilliant. I know it's a secret ballot, and that's absolutely fine. I'm very curious, particularly for those who voted against resolutions on this and anything else, if you could feed back your comments. You don't necessarily have to say you voted against, but it would help us.
Put them in the chat.
But it would help us, just so that we can build and try and build in some of those concerns and make sure that they're addressed. So I'm now going to move to the next set of resolutions, which are the board appointments. As already mentioned, Martin Allman stepping down from the board at this meeting, and we're delighted that Joe Michaels, who's the commercial director at Joju Solar, has offered to join the board and take over as our technical lead. Things are moving pretty fast in the solar world and the energy sector generally, so we're delighted to have someone with his experience join us. And he has actually already been working with Martin on the transformer issue, so it's been a bit of a baptism of fire for him, but I think that will at least help him hit the ground running. Joe's CV was included in the AGM papers, particularly given the time available. I'm not proposing that he gives a sort of hustling speech, but if anybody's got any particular questions that they'd like to ask Joe now, or that we can pick up in the chat, please do so. We will all hopefully be seeing you on October the 15th in Didcot, if I can give that event another plug. So the opportunity to meet all the board there is there. If there aren't any questions, I'm going to propose that Joe Michaels be elected as a director. If we can have a seconder for, please.
Sorry, anyone coming in as a seconder for the motion? Roger Thompson again, thank you.
Thank you. And Sam, if you want to open the votes.
Yep. Voting opened. Answers. And we will go close the vote in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's share results for you there. So we had 22 for, 0 against, and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. I declare the resolution passed.
Yep. As you can see, all of it also in favour generally before the AGM as well. So, yep, motion passed. Next one.
Thank you, Sam. So the next one is the reappointment of Mari Brooks. Under our rules, a third of our directors have to retire by rotation each year, and they may stand for re-election. And Mari and myself, as the 2 directors on the board who served longer since we were last re-elected, are going through that process this year. The board and myself personally were delighted that Mari's offered herself for re-election. Her project management skills are very much appreciated, as is her involvement with Project Leo and all the work that is going on there in terms of designing better UK networks going forward. Again, Mari's summary was included in the AGM papers, so if people don't have any questions, I'm going to go straight to proposing that Mari Brooks be elected as a director. And if I can have a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Bob.
Former director, putting their hand in. Thank you, Bob.
And Sam, if you could open the poll.
I will indeed open the poll. Here we are. So it looks like we're getting votes very quickly. So we'll close the votes in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it looks like we have, I'll just share those, sorry, and you have 23 for, 0 against, and 1 abstention. And
thank you.
Yeah.
I declare that resolution passed as well.
Votes for, absolutely. At this point, Nina, would you like to would you be able to unmute yourself and take over as chair, please?
I certainly will, and it's a pleasure to do this bit. Tom is far too modest to say anything about the work that he does behind the scenes, but it's a phenomenal amount of time that he puts in. Just the day-to-day, keeping it all together, making the ordinary stuff happen, and then all the future vision things. And Martin commented about good leadership. That's really made a difference. And then, of course, the unexpected things like the transformer going. So Tom just does a fantastic job. Okay, you can guess which way I've voted. Does anybody have any questions before we have a vote on this ourselves? Any questions in the chat?
Doesn't look like it. We're already getting a motion to seconded from Mike, so thank you, Mike Landy, for that.
Thank you, Mike. Quick off the mark.
I will launch the poll now for members.
Yeah,
so that
no questions. We'll go straight into that then. Thank you.
That is launched now, so please take your time to put your vote in. We'll close that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there seems to be a resounding agreement. 26 for, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. I'll stop sharing that. And just in terms of as well, 234, 5 against, 30 abstentions. So we can count that motion as passed.
Pretty clear, assuming Tom's going to exercise his proxy votes in favour.
But in which case we may count this as you acting as proxy in this situation as chair at this point.
That's correct. Yeah.
Rather than Tom giving himself 110 extra votes.
Okay, thank you very much. Handing back to you then, Tom, as you've kept your job.
Thank you. I'm blushing immensely. Thanks. This is a thank you, because I'm conscious we've only got about 2 minutes before we move on to the community funding. Thanks, Nina, for everybody who's helped this meeting go so smoothly. I'd just like to highlight a couple of things that, I mean, all those who are attending are probably more engaged than others, but you will be getting more in the coming weeks and months on the trading dividend, the update on the Centre for Alternative Technology Partnership, which we're very excited about, and which fundamentally Mark Luntley has done all the work on that. So thank you to him for that. The move of the back office from FX to Energy for All, which will affect you as members. So if you have old address details, old bank details, particularly if you have unclaimed interest, and that's a shout out for people who might be watching this on catch up, I suspect, please let us know as soon as possible so that you don't get left behind with the move and that we have all the details and can make that as smooth as possible. And again, I will give it a plug. We look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in person at the Westmill Futures event in Didcot on 15th of October. I'd like to thank you, members, for your continuing support. As I mentioned, it's great to have you engaged. We know that we don't always make decisions that you agree with, but we want to hear what they are, and we do our very best to take them into account and make sure that they make our decisions better. There'll be a questionnaire that follows in the context of that after the end of this morning's meeting, so please give us your feedback on that as part of that, and please keep the questions coming. Thank you to the board colleagues who, again, have been a joy to work with, I have to say, and I'm not saying that just because you've been nice to me a couple of minutes ago, and have provided copious amounts of time, expertise and effort in moving Westmill Solar, Westmill Wind forward. To Adam Twine, who continues to be a phenomenally supportive landlord and an inspiration for new ideas. To Ryan and the team who've put together this event, and especially, and this is a big shout out to EPEX, who have been with us for the whole of the last decade. Without their help raising over $5.5 million back in 2012 for a project that many said wouldn't happen, couldn't be done, we would literally not be here now. We're delighted that Sarah is joining us in the move to Energy for All. And I think we all very much hope that Sam and the rest of the team, and indeed EPEX as an organisation, continue to be part of the Westmill journey in some way or other. So thank you for everything you've done. It's a wrench leaving. It's exciting looking forward to joining Energy for All. And we look forward to talking about that with you as members and other organisations in the weeks and months to come. So with that, thanks. I can declare the formal AGM now closed and hand over to Nina, who's going to go into more detail with the WeSet team about the community funding programme.